I'll try not to say anything too salacious now.
You be on your best behavior.
Never.
Never, I refuse.
We can do a flawless edit. It'll be
We
fine.
can do that. I'm an
Yeah.
editing genius. I tell
We're
myself.
professionals.
Exactly. Firstly, I want to say a huge thank you, Bentley Jones, for joining us here on the Opinion Zone podcast. Thank you for coming along and having a chat.
Hello. No, thank you very much for having me. I'm very honored that you asked.
There's so many things I want to talk to you about your music, about your involvement in the Sonic community, the new things that I've seen recently, the OCs, and I guess the best way to start is if you go all the way back. Rewind the time machine, which I hate doing as I get older. The last thing I want to do is think about how many years have passed. But I guess a good place to start would be, well, what came first? Your interest in music or your first awareness of Sonic? What do you think? What's the earliest memory? Which one comes first for you?
That would definitely be music.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about it. No, it's definitely music. I was brought up constantly surrounded by music. Although like no one else in my family is a musician, there are no other artists in my family, which like is both a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
But my mom is as much of a music lover as I am. So when I was a kid, there was always music playing in the background. So that kind of was the foundation of my absolute obsession with music.
Yeah.
But it would have been really shortly afterwards that I discovered Sonic, because my first Sonic experience was playing Sonic 1 at my friend's house, because I was not a cool kid, so I did not have a Mega Drive Genesis. So I had to go around to his house and play Sonic there.
I totally relate to that. I was very similar. So my friend had the Mega Drive Genesis, and after school, I remember going around once, and they played. I think it was Sonic 2. Was probably the first time I saw a Sonic game, and I'd be like, I don't know what I'm looking at, but I need this in my life. I want this, and I became quite obsessed about it. And I remember there was a long time of pleading my parents to buy me a Sega Mega Drive, to which they were very kindly like, yeah, we don't have that kind of money. you can just hang out at your friend's house and play.
Well, I'm the youngest child, so I ended up getting a hand-me-down Mega Drive from one of my brothers. So I got one eventually, but it was years after the Mega Drive's heyday. So I still wasn't a cool kid.
So if your first interaction was actually the video games, at that time, did any of the music, just because the Sonic soundtrack is quite distinctive even on that console, I don't think there were many other games that sounded anything like what they were doing. Did anything that catch your ear and be like, okay, this is interesting, what's going on here?
Masato Nakamura's soundtracks from start to finish, essentially. Yeah, I just, like you said, no one else was doing it at the time. And the way that he managed to utilize the Yamaha sound chip in the Mega Drive. Other games on the Mega Drive weren't sounding like that. So it was very distinctive, and it was immediate. Like the second I picked up the controller, like you said, I was like, oh my god, what is this? This is going to change my life.
Did you ever feel there was a point in your life where you knew those were going to start merging? Do you ever feel like that? Did you ever foresee that, or did it really come out of the blue for you?
No, it was very deliberate.
Yeah, love it. Tell me more. I want to know.
I was on a mission. Um, like a lot of things in my career have kind of seemingly been happy accidents.
Yeah.
And I guess some of the circumstances around some of them I haven't seen coming, but there's always been a drive and a strategy like heavily behind it. So by the time I did end up working on Sonic for the first time, I'd already established my profile as a producer. I'd had like a few club chart number ones with my remixes. And I'd already started moving into video game soundtracks, which is precisely why I had my composer show reel, and that was being shopped around.
Yeah.
And we were going through the list of studios that me and my team wanted to reach out to.
Yeah.
And yeah, if anyone doesn't know, that's how it works. It's still how it works. You shop your show reel around, and if people like what they hear, then they'll get in touch and consider hiring you. And we were going through the list, and I was like, "Oh, make sure Sonic Team are on that list." And yeah, I ended up getting an email saying, "We like what we hear. Do you want to come and make some music for the next Sonic game?" I was like, "Yes, please." Yes, please. So yeah,
So truly manifesting then. Like
absolutely.
you absolutely like I'm gonna make this happen.
Yeah, it's there's a fallacy in music, and it crosses over to video games as well, that like you're discovered, and like like the term overnight success is thrown around a lot. And having been in the music industry for 20 years, um, I can categorically tell you that even when they claim it's an overnight success or someone has been discovered out of the blue,
Yeah.
it's not true. It's not true at all. It's just PR guff. So yeah, there's a lot of people and a lot of stories that claim that I was discovered, but like I'd cemented my career in music by that point, and I'd been working full time in the music industry as a producer and a composer for, I don't know, it was like 5 or 6 years or something like that. So yeah, it was very deliberate and very strategic, and I like to think that it was all based on the strength of my work, or at least the passion that I put into my work.
Yeah. I think it's clear that you had already laid the groundwork there. When it had all come together, one, I'm very curious what the process of doing that, making that song for the first time. So I guess that's very different. It's a very different from when you're like making your own music, where you have full control over what the message is, what it's about. Whereas this is about making something for, in a weird way, making something for a client in a sort of way. How does that process compare to what you would do for your own music?
Well, yeah, for my own work, there are no boundaries.
Yeah.
So, like, if I wake up and I'm having a bad day and I want to do some screamo thrash metal, then there's nothing stopping me. Which is why my own bodies of work, they can get quite eclectic.
Mm.
But I quite like that because it taps into my sensibility of um being a composer and writing for other people and other projects and to
Mhm.
briefs, because I like that I have that versatility.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I said, having already been in the music industry at that point, I was used to working for clients and briefs and things like that. So sometimes the brief is painfully specific,
Yeah.
And it turns into essentially a paint by numbers process.
Right.
But then other times, and this is kind of more common when you've established yourself, and you already have kind of a style and a bit of your own signature sound. That the brief is essentially a nudge in the direction that they want you to go in, and then beyond that, they give you free reign.
Hmm.
Um, and that's kind of what happened the first time I worked on Sonic, which was Shadow the Hedgehog,
Yeah.
and his spin off. And yeah, I was basically told, like, this is for a boss, this is the theme of Eggman. Being a Sonic fan from childhood up until this point, I was like, say no more. Hold my beer, I've got this. So yeah, they I'm not gonna lie, they didn't give me that much direction. But then again, they were so familiar with my work outside of Sonic at that point.
Yeah.
I think they had all of the confidence in me to just send me on my way. And I've never thought about it. It's been a long time since I've thought about those days. And there were no revisions either. In all
Really?
the music that I contributed,
Yeah.
I don't ever recall having to make any changes to what I submitted. So
Wow,
yeah, I
you are
like.
on fire.
I was obviously doing something right.
You were doing something very well. If they were like, yeah, no notes. Perfect. I love that.
Well, not that we're told to my face anyway.
How? Because again, it was the original song, like Dreams of an Absolution. That's probably the one that everyone. I'm sure it's the one that everyone chants at you to sing when they see you in the Sonic space. Um, and it was just themed around a brand new character, which so many people have taken to their hearts in Silver. How did you feel about the reaction to that? Because it was so, from my memory of it, it was so well received. Because also it was something so different. Like Sonic in that era, especially the adventure era and beyond, a lot of the music had a very Crush 40, such forth, a very identifiable sound. And I feel
Mm.
like Dreams Absolution really, in terms of Sonic music at that time, was a bit of a left field. It was like, what is this? This is a different genre of music. It's a different point of view. It's a new vocal artist. Like, and I think people really responded well to that. Did you feel that at the time? Did you feel that sort of how people were reacting to this new music and how they were, because it was literally defining the character of Silver at the
Um, oh wow.
time? Just overwhelm you with that question.
A little bit. That's a really good. I love questions that stop me in my tracks. Um, I don't think I thought about it because at that point, like I
Mhm.
was so busy with
Yeah,
work. I was still producing remixes. I'd moved into writing for other
yeah.
artists as
Mhm.
well as all the composing side of things, and I was starting to pursue a career for myself as an artist.
Yeah.
So around that time, it was like it was all really going on. And I mean, I remember the reaction being overwhelmingly positive, and that meant a lot to me.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I think that period whizzed by so fast because there were a lot of things on the imminent horizon that I
Yeah.
was heading towards, and I didn't really have time to kind of stop and really enjoy it.
Mhm.
Um, and I guess that's part of the reason why I'm enjoying this like sonic renaissance, like coming back to the community and
Yeah.
hearing about people's experiences of that song at that time. And I'm
Yeah.
like, wow, that's really cool. At least I get to hear about it now, when it went by so fast at the time.
It makes me happy to hear that you're now finally getting to hear that and to take the time to really get the recognition and the warmth that you do deserve through that. Because I know for a fact there are a lot of Silver fans out there, and
Oh,
that song means a lot to them.
oh, thank you. No, I did get some of it at the time. I maybe didn't really fully comprehend
Yeah,
the enormity of it at
yeah,
the time. I think that's
mm,
the only thing.
yeah. And of course, you did one other track at the time with Sega, which was for one of the horrendously long titled ones, Sonic. And was it Sonic and Sega All Stars Racing?
Ah,
It was
yes.
the first one, yes. The next big vocal track, which was so much more. So much more. Dreams of an Absolution, like two like big vocal tracks in the Sonic community. I know so many people were extremely excited. For example, when you came back to do that track for the racing game, and it was around the time where you were also obviously doing your own music as well. But ever since then, I think people have really wanted to. People love seeing you do music within this fandom, and I know you've continued to do some, but it's always been almost feels like in a parallel space to what you've done in the earlier days. And
Mm.
I'm curious to know more about what your experience was coming out of those collaborations on those video games.
Um, I well, my memory is hazy. Um, Chronologically, I can't remember if I did any more after So Much More. I know in terms of the games themselves,
Mhm.
but I know I did a handful of soundtrack CDs as well, and I can't remember if
Mhm.
those came afterwards. Um, but yeah, it was kind of a combination, because I at that point I had already put out an album that had done really well,
Mhm.
and so I was getting a lot of opportunities, as a recording artist, just to go off and do my own thing, um, and it was kind of multifaceted. It was a little bit of that, a little bit of the fact that the commercial music industry
Mhm.
really hated that I was a composer for video games. Like, if anyone goes back and reads like a press release or an article or an interview with me about my artist works, they'll
Mhm.
never mention my video game side of things, because as far as like the record labels and management were concerned, it just wasn't cool. And you have to be cool to be a recording artist. Apparently, I've never been
Apparently.
cool, so
No.
I like to think I broke the mold. So there was a little bit of that, and there was this constant conflict, because at the same time, because I made my artist debut in Japan,
Mhm.
I actually lost a really big video game project, that I was brought on board for. They'd
Mm.
signed off, and I was ready to start working on the soundtrack.
Yeah.
And then the development team learned that, like, I was in the top 5 in Japan, and they're like, "Oh no, we don't want to have the stigma of having our composer also be a successful J-pop artist." And I was like, "Oh my god, really? Like, I can't
That's
win
wild.
either way." But then sprinkle on top of that, I did have a handful of really difficult experiences, working on Sonic and working with Sonic Team. And so
Mhm.
it just kind of very, very naturally planted some distance there.
Yeah.
And as time went on, um, I decided to step away, because those difficulties, uh they were quite traumatic, and I needed to take that time away to process all of that and like really heal, I guess. And it was very much a conscious effort, because the community, God love them, and I do truly, truly love the Sonic community, but they're very, very enthusiastic.
That's a
Uh,
very good way to put it. Yes.
yeah, like, and I love that about the community, because the
Yeah.
community treats me really, really well. But
Mm.
I was constantly being reminded of all of these things and all of these negative experiences. And there was a point where I consciously said, look, I need to step fully away from
Yeah.
this franchise that I've been a part of,
Mm.
so I can process everything that's happened, but also focus on everything else that I'm working on right now. So that's kind of how it happened.
Yeah. I think this brings up an interesting thought to my head, actually, which I hadn't really considered before, which is, again, there's obviously it's wonderful, like you said, the Sonic community is great, and they really embrace things they love, like truly embrace those things. But then I guess there's also this point of like, you still want to have your own identity as an artist as well at the same time.
Mm.
And I think you've done that really well. Like, so your music's great. I have some personal favorites. One song, which still I loop to this day, which I believe is from the album Upgrade, called Stutter 2.0.
Oh my gosh.
I adore that track. It's really like that's a track when I need to get shit done. And I need to like something to just fucking
Nice.
give me all the like get up and go energy. Like, I feel like I could smash for a window, like in a superhero way, not in a like terrible, but like undefeatable. That gives me the vibes I need. So I've been listening to that song for many a year, but
I love that one too.
it's so
I particularly love performing it, because that ended up in a video game as well. So I've performed it a handful of times,
Yeah.
and it's kind of my party trick, because obviously the whole point of the song is that there's really fast Japanese lyrics in it.
Yes.
So yeah, I have two party tricks. One of them is rapping in Japanese, and one of them is stutter.
I do want to talk about one specific era to me, which really stood out to me, and I think really drew me back in, I guess, in a weird way. And it's a song I've talked to you about before, which is I Don't Really Care. But also this song before, which is I Could Be Your Girl.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, when you brought out that song and not too later, I Don't Really Care, it felt like this. I think it'd always been there, but felt like a more conscious switch to embrace identity and embrace gender and sexuality in music. And I loved it. I can't express to you how much I loved it, because I don't think queer representation in music is anywhere where it needs to be. And that music onwards, I feel, especially in the music videos and everything, it really felt like you were tapping into something. And I'm curious, was that a conscious decision, or was that just something that naturally just happened?
Um, I think a bit of both.
Hmm.
um, oh wow, another left field question. Um, but I love it. I absolutely love it. Yeah, I think it was a little bit of both. I think a large part of it was simply just growing up a little bit.
Hmm.
And as you grow up, as anyone can testify to,
Yeah.
you just become more and more assured of who you are.
Yeah.
um, and I think that never changes. I think throughout our lives, like well into like elderly, I think we are constantly evolving. We're constantly discovering new things
Yeah.
about ourselves. And I think I just reached that point where I'd been independent for a long time.
Hmm.
Um, and at that point, I'd been through a lot of shit, um,
Mm.
because I moved to Japan,
Hmm.
and that was under a production deal, which um, ended unexpectedly. I
Mm.
didn't have a very good time with the company I was working with. I went to transfer to another company, which, funnily enough, was owned by another video game composer. It's very interesting that
Yeah, it's
all these
interesting.
people have like these strange this one thing in common in terms of being a video game composer. Um, so I'd come back to the UK to process my visa for this transfer,
Yeah.
and like I was all in. Like I'd spent the prior months in Tokyo. And when I came back to the UK, I had already relinquished the lease on my apartment. I'd sold my car, my furniture. Like I was
Fuck.
ready. And then the owner of this company just turned around and categorically said, we're pulling the plug because we're too scared to have an artist as queer as you on the roster, and we're worried about what our audience and our target demographics would think. And then COVID hit, like literally within the space of a month. So that whole album was a little bit of a fuck it moment.
Yeah.
Um, like like having gone through all of that and been categorically rejected just for being who I was. I was just kind of like, fuck it. I'm gonna do this
Yeah.
exactly how I want to do it. I'm gonna do it as me times 10, and just say to the world, like, this is who I am. Like, take me or leave me, but I'm not gonna change. So in that sense, it was very, very conscious and very much a deliberate statement, because it would have been
Yeah.
very easy to have broken through that experience.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna lie, I took myself to a therapist, because there was a lot of stuff to unpack.
Yeah.
And even she was a bit like, considering what you've gone through, you're still doing well. Like you're functioning as a human being. Like most people would have just crumpled.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was very much a statement of resilience. And I I've never really felt an overwhelming responsibility with my work in terms of the message that I
Mm.
should be putting out there, and setting an
Mm.
example and whatnot. I don't necessarily buy into that as an artist, but for that particular album, The Examined Life, I really
Wow.
did want to kind of step forward and say, like, look, you can be chewed up by the world and spit out and
Yeah.
left to rot in the rain. But you can still manage to turn it into something like very beautiful, something very strong that you can be immensely proud of. And I think that album will always have a special place in my heart, just for that fact alone.
The way I described the I don't really care song to you is probably a word I won't be using on this podcast because it's probably one of extreme, but very much the only way I felt I've ever heard someone talk about almost like a biography of their career at one point in such a serve, shall we say.
It really was that. The way you described it was beautiful.
I
still need to like take a screenshot of it and post it. But no, it very much was. I just had this vision of this very kind of like chill pop vibe. And just not necessarily a rap, because I remember discussing it heavily at the time, and consciously I didn't want to rap because I didn't want it to seem performative. I wanted it to sound exactly as you've said, like, this is some of the shit that I've been through. Like, you wouldn't believe the journey that I've been on and the things that I've had to deal with. But hey, I'm gonna serve it with a hella catchy pop hook to beat. So
it's such a good song. I'm now going to be listening to that song later today.
Thank you.
It's so good. There's another track on that album, which is another one you made a music video for, and I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of it. But is it the Metamelo, the iPappy one?
Oh yes.
Again, that such a vibe, such a fucking vibe. That song. I just want to. I'm very curious. What specifically for that track? What made that come to life? What was in your head for you? What that we can talk about. But
I was going to say, or was it a case of what were you thinking?
Because again, I think another representation of that specific era of just like, I feel like very authentically just like this is the vibe I'm feeling right now, and I'm putting it to music, and I very much fuck with that vibe. It was very good.
Thank you. How did Metamela come about? Well, first of all, at the time, I had an endorsement in Miami. I was their Pride ambassador.
Yes.
And of course, they have a massive Latin audience and population. So I really wanted to, for their Pride song at least, and for my performances, I kind of wanted to embrace that, so that I could really speak and perform for everybody rather than just a portion of the audience. So, of course, like my experience learning Japanese, the first thing you do is you ask your native friends, and the first thing they do is teach you all of the naughty words. And that's pretty much what happened with Metamela. And that's kind of how it came about, because I was learning all of these like Spanish phrases and words that I shouldn't be learning. And the thing that I love about Spanish and Japanese is that because the pronunciation is very similar, which is probably why I was drawn to Spanish in the first place. And because Japanese has a particle system, I find it very rhythmic, which is why I love it to music. But yeah, there were certain phrases that they were teaching me, and I was like, oh, this has some rhythm. This reminds me of Japanese. And I was just going around my my little apartment at the time one morning, as most of my songs happen, and I was got up and made coffee and whatever, and I was just like metamela, metamela, and I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna have to turn that into a song. And that's pretty much how it happened. And then it kind of ran away with me because that song was tied up with Sony for a product endorsement, and
Right.
then we ended up doing the video, which was wild. It involved the dance troupe that I was a member of at the time, the Stiletto troupe,
Yeah.
and the director of that troupe was like. Um, he wanted to do a video, and at the time Metamela had just come into fruition, and I
Yeah.
was like, well, what do you think of this song? And he's as filthy minded as I am. Like anyone, a lot of people in the Sonic fandom might not be aware. All of my stalkers, they know I'm a highly sexual person, and I wear it proudly. So yeah, I mentioned this song to him, and he's as filthy minded as I am, and he was like, I love it, let's do a video, and we'll get you all wearing green balaclavas, and you can terrorize this big muscle dude. And I was like, sounds perfect, let's do
You wouldn't have to ask me twice.
it.
Yeah, it's just I again, another one of those songs that there's sometimes you just hear a song and it just takes something in your brain, and you're like, okay, this is going on the shuffle forever now, and that was definitely one of them. And then obviously the next album, the next big album, is Memoriam, which is
Mm.
your most recent one, which is kind of wild to me because it's again 15th anniversary, which is just an achievement in itself. What I talked about with your early stuff, and but also then this what really spoke to me in your more recent stuff, and it feels like it's just culmination of everything. Very much the ultimate life form, if you will, just coming together.
I see
And
what you
so,
did there.
yeah, you're a shadow. So, but it does really feel like just the most beautiful and amazing representation of all this culmination of your experience and work all coming together to this point. I think for any artist to be able to look back and say that's how long I've been putting out music, working on music in this capacity, is an achievement.
Oh, thank you. Well, it was pointed out to me to start with, because I'm
Mhm.
a workhorse,
Yes.
and the music industry is relentless, and it doesn't matter how much or how little success you have. You don't get a chance to really take it in,
Yeah.
because the second it happens, you have to start working on the thing that's going to follow it.
Yeah.
And that has been my 15 years as an artist. It's been 20 years in the industry,
Yeah.
but 15 years as an artist. Um, and when it first started to dawn on me and my team and my collaborators, that 15 years was coming up, everyone was like, wow. And like, I was like, why are you making this such a big deal? And they said, because it is a big deal. So, um, but it's been a difficult road. And I'm
Mm.
like, I don't want to sell myself as a sob story, but anyone who works in the creative field, I think all creatives are kind of in the same boat, whether it's music or anything else. It is difficult. And especially if you are doing that by yourself independently. So I'm so grateful for all of the crazy experiences that I've had.
Mm.
But it's been a bit of a slog.
Yeah.
And when the first talks were happening about Memoriam, because the previous album, I thought, oh, maybe that might be my last album, or at least my last album for a little while.
Yeah.
Um, and I still had that feeling when we first started talking about Memoriam as well, and I was like, well, I can't ignore this feeling in case this is my last album,
Yeah.
which is kind of where the concept for Memoriam came from. And when I first announced it, a group of my stalkers were like, "Oh no, he's disappearing forever!" And they're like, I was just kind of like keeping the door open for that possibility. Um,
Yeah.
and and I think that's why it turned into the album that it is, and the big celebration of all areas of my work, and having lots of throwbacks and lots of references to kind of standout points of my career. Because I've always said, if I am going to go out, I want to go out with the biggest of bangs.
Yeah.
And so, like with the Examined Life, I thought to
Mm.
myself, if this is going to be my last album, then I need to make it particularly special. And then, obviously, with it being the 15th anniversary, I was like, okay, I have no choice. I need to raise the bar with this one.
And you truly did. And I think, and again, it ties back, I guess it brings it all full circle, really, when we talked about the start with Dreams of Absolution and the other work you've done for Sega and stuff, is that this is one of the first, again, after quite a while, one of the first times you sort of more prominently started tapping back into uh, music of the sonic genre. If there isn't, even if I don't think we can call it a genre, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And just re-engaging with that music again. Why why now? Like what brought you to that point
Why?
of being like, because I think it's fair to say that, you know, the experiences you had, and like you said, you decided, okay, I need to make some space. I need to make some space.
Mm.
What brought you to feeling that you were ready to revisit and engage with that again?
It's just one simple thing, and that's the fans.
Yeah.
Um, they they've always held space for me, and like I've seen little bits of it where the Sonic fan base can be a little bit volatile and a little bit toxic,
Yeah.
which I've at times struggled to get my head around because they've been nothing but wonderful to me.
Yeah.
Um, and and it's primarily them,
Yeah.
essentially,
Mm.
because they message me all the time, even when I was desperately trying to put distance between myself and the series and the community.
Mm.
I would get messages all the time, so it was always like there in the peripheral.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the first thing that really drew me back was Omens and doing The Weight of the World.
Yes, of course.
um and that in itself was kind of a curveball, I
Yeah.
suppose. Because well, I kind of saw it as like an opportunity to step back, because obviously with it being a fan game,
Mm.
first of all, an incredible fan game. Like I wouldn't have been prepared to have gotten involved if it
Yeah.
wasn't to such a high standard. But when I saw it, and when I saw the future releases of what they were working on, I was like, oh my gosh, let's do it. Like, what's the harm? And then that kind of blew up in a really, really big way. And it was really a wake up call that there was this large group of people who had
Yeah.
been waiting for me for all of this time.
Yeah.
And I was like, I really need to get back to them. I've kept them thirsty for so long. So yeah, the weight of the world has a lot to answer for. And that was
I
really kind of like the gateway back in for me.
I can't believe that I had lost my train of thought, because that song is that song is insane. Like the intensity of that song is so much. How I will continue talking about Memoria, but I need to talk now. This is in my head. I can't move on from it now.
No worries.
How did that even come about? Like again, for a fan game to approach an artist and be like, "Do you want to? Do you want to do this?" Like, we haven't seen anything like that before.
Oh, because I get asked all the time, and even before Omens, I get message like loads. Honestly, the number of fan
Really
projects, yeah,
amazing, so
uh,
interesting.
yeah. So, but Omens came about, and obviously that really blew me away.
Mm,
I can't remember if like who asked who first. It was definitely a discussion either
mm,
way. But that's also one of the reasons I really liked the idea, because there weren't constraints from like a corporation like Sega. There
yeah.
was so much creative freedom.
Mm,
And so I was introduced to John Rise, who did, I believe, all or at least a lot of the original music for
yes.
Omens, and I was collaborating with him for the final theme. And he sent me what he had of the music so far, and obviously it was very boss battle, typical like tension, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And I was like, we could really push this further than if it were an official Sonic game.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really went ham with that intensity, and I wanted to go dark and give Exile this truly, truly menacing feeling, rather than like a kidified, like Disney
Yeah.
villain
Yeah.
kind of feeling. So yeah, I definitely had a sore throat a few times, screaming that song out.
Oh my god, I remember. So I was not very tuned in with the progress of that fan game, its development stuff. But I remember it was out at one point, and I was like, okay, I'll give it a go. I remember getting to the point where towards the final boss, basically where your track is,
Mm.
and I remember playing it and being like, so again, I had no idea. I remember playing, and be like, is that fucking Bentley? What the? It's just like it's like this fan game did not need to go as hard as it did. Like absolutely wild to me. It blew my mind. I was like, what is happening? Was straight on to find the track and was like, this is another banger.
But I think that's a testament to how passionate um, Bolt and his team were for
Mm,
Omens, and again,
yeah,
that made it a very easy yes for me, because I was able to come in and like inherit that passion and that energy.
yeah. And so as you said, uh, it was that brought you. That was the gateway back into making music around this franchise and playing around with things. What I kind of like is, yes, you've done an amazing cover of Live and Learn. It's really good, and you've revisited some of your previous tracks as well. Um, I love, I love. I know I've said this before, but I adore the fact that you did Hard Times, because it is wild. It's bananas to me that no other artist or anyone who like does even like fan covers and stuff has thought, oh, I know this song that is clearly Ice Cap. This is this has been everyone's seen it on YouTube. Like, oh look, this is the song that um, and no one's thought, oh, maybe I should do a modern take, like a more modern version of it. No, and so when you put it out, I was like, how has no one done this yet?
That was exactly my thinking behind it. I couldn't believe that no one had done it. Um, and obviously, like, I was very, very familiar with the lore behind it. So when it did come to
Mm,
like planning out Memoriam and having references to my time with Sonic, I was like, let's do Hard Times. Let's be the first. And I've got to say, because I have a blast when I'm here in my studio, working on albums and things like that. But I was a giddy little kid working on Hard Times, and
Yeah.
especially like putting together the orchestration for the introduction.
The
and
intro is off the charts. The anticipation it builds throughout, like, is crazy. And in my head, like, I'm curious as well. Like, the 2 times I've heard you perform it was the opening to both sets, I believe. And it feels very conscious, because that is such a, like, let's build a hype moment to enter and do the first song. Like, it's such a good way to open the set.
Well, when it came to like thinking what I wanted to do with the track, because anyone who knows me that knows that if I'm going to cover something, then I'm going to put my stamp on it, even if that means by the end it sounds like a completely different song. But for Hard Times, I was so torn, because I knew I wanted to do a symphonic arrangement, but I also knew that kind of like 80s like new wave kind of vibe that the original had, that would be so much fun to kind of like put a modern spit and polish onto it. So when I was trying to like map it out and make decisions, as I'm really terrible at doing, I thought to myself, let's just do both. We'll put in, like, as you say, a massive hype moment for the intro, and we'll just drop into the vocal section. And
when it drops into that, when it drops, because it builds and builds and builds, this beautiful orchestral moment. And the way it just drops into that first vocal, you can feel it through your body. Like, it hits so hard. It's so good. And when we heard it live at Sonicon, I was like, it even more so, like times 10. I was like, actually I would say at the after party, because the sound was quite intense in that space. It just you could feel it through your body. It's like, this is gold. This is so good. The other track I want to talk about in terms of the sonic space, which I thought was really interesting, was "I'm Good, Babe," because that's like an original. Like, it feels very Bentley. That makes sense. It feels very like it feels like it's your sound. It's obviously referencing Green Hill Zone. What was the approach to that? Because that's obviously, I feel that's quite different to what you've done before with sonic music.
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, when I come up with ideas for my songs, it's normally when I'm doing something else.
Right.
So like making coffee or having a shower or something, and then I'll have to like voice note it on my phone, which is why my phone is full of those things. And I think I was driving to the gym. I remember being in my car, and I just came up with that hook. I'm good, babe, I'm doing fine on my own, chilling like we're cruising in the Green Hill Zone.
I'm good, babe, I'm doing fine on my own, chilling like we're cruising in the Green Hill Zone. I'm good, babe, I'm doing fine on my own, chilling like we're cruising in the Green Hill Zone. I'm good, babe, I'm doing fine on my own, chilling like we're cruising in the Green Hill Zone. I'm good, babe, chilling like we're cruising in the Green Hill Zone.
And it came about because round about that time, this sounds so diva, and I apologize now. The reality was far from it, but it was shortly after I'd fired my entire team. So at the time, I had a manager, an agent, and I had PR and marketing that were running my music. And I'd fired them all. And based on that idea and that concept, like, I'm good, babe, I'm doing fine on my own. So that's where that came from. And I was singing that hook for weeks, if not months, before I'd even thought about laying down a demo or anything like that. And the reason I ended up putting it down was there was another moment where it took me a while, granted. Probably should have happened in the space of 5 minutes, but it took several weeks. And I had this light bulb moment, and I was like, oh, why don't I merge it with Green Hill Zone? I mean, I mentioned it in the lyrics. Duh. So I played around with it, and it turned out like that. So yeah,
it's so good. I don't think I've ever heard like the motif of Green Hill Zone done in such a cool way. Is the way I can describe it. It's just again, when we're talking about I don't really care and me saying it, how did I phrase it? A serve of a biography, because we won't say the other thing I said. It feels like that energy, but which again, like, fucking love it. And it's such a mood. And I think also, again, speaking to the queer experience, there's so many times where I'm just like, fuck the world, I'm on it, don't worry about me, I'm fine. Merging that with then the sonic part of my life as well, and I feel like I'm good babe sort of starts to blend those two energies together, and I'm like, this is amazing. Like,
right?
Because where else does a song like where it doesn't exist anywhere else, a song with like that energy, those two areas merging together, like you can't find that anywhere else. I love it.
Yeah, it's a little moment. It's 2.5 minutes of madness, but it works so beautifully. When I was laying it down, I was kind of like pulling and pushing it, and I just couldn't get something that I was truly happy with. And then that, like, I put together that 4-part harmony on the pre-chorus. And it just all started to like glue together, and then manipulating my voice, because it's actually my voice manipulated playing the Green Hill melody.
So good.
And it just came together. And like you say, it's a vibe, like mashing these two worlds together. And it really shouldn't work, but somehow it does.
It does. And again, I think that's a testament to the talents of what you're not just, again, because you write your music, you sing your music, you produce, like it's really a combination of all that. It's so good. And that song specifically makes me think of the other thing I want to talk about, which is sort of like your grand return to specifically sonic themed conventions and spaces, where you performed at Sonicon a couple of months ago. And one, I'd like to just hear about your general experience of being back in such a, again, sonic focused space, but also again, like, front of stage, people like just so happy to see you perform and so excited for you to be there, and then chanting Green Hill Zone back at you, in deafeningly, like chanting it back. How does that feel? Like, it's crazy.
It was a trip, that whole weekend and that whole day, because I'm not gonna lie, I was really nervous. And I've done hundreds of shows at this point. But because I guess of my backstory and my journey, having that time away, and then like very, very tentatively making my way back to the Sonic community, and then just throwing myself at the deep end doing this convention, which I was grateful to be asked to do, don't get me wrong. But yeah, I realized when I was heading heading up there to Manchester, I was really nervous. And the thing was, I wasn't nervous about the performance. I was nervous about like coming down into the convention the next day, knowing that I was going to be in amongst the Sonic fans again. And I
Yeah.
genuinely had no idea how I was going to be received that
Yeah.
day. I didn't know if I was going to be swarmed or if I was going to be sitting in my guest booth alone for the entire day. But luckily it was the former, and that whole experience was very, very special.
Yeah.
And if I had any anxiety about coming back to Sonic, it was
Yeah.
completely dissipated by the people at SonicCon, including yourself.
Very kind.
So yeah, that performance, I just rode that wave. That was one of the best performances I've ever had the pleasure of doing. And then the after party just kind of ran itself. Like after the main day performance, I was on a cloud, and I went into that after party knowing that everything's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
Like worst case scenario, I'll just stop singing and they can sing it for me.
The after party was so fun because again, you're in this bar. I feel like it was, again, that's more how I like to experience music, that sort of environment. I think because everyone can just have a dance and have a drink and have fun. I remember you saying, because unfortunately you had to head off as you weren't able to stay the night, which meant that you asked everyone to, I can't remember what drink you said everyone to have on your behalf. It was something...
Tequila.
That
it's
was
always tequila with me.
I feel like a lot of them honored you on that one. I think from what I've heard, it's one of the, when they do after party events, that's probably one of the first where actually there are people there to the very end of the early hours. Like they had to actually shoo people out, like, we're closed now, please leave.
Wow.
So
that's
Sonic
amazing.
fans go hard when it comes to an after party, which I very much am all for. I'm very much happy about.
I'm a little bit gutted that I wasn't able to stay, but yeah, my time at the after party was still pretty extraordinary.
I think you definitely set the tone for that night very, very well. So you do this again your first big Sonic event, and Sonic's again specific performance in a while, and like I said, everyone responded so well to it. One other thing though from SonicCon specifically, which is something I've not experienced before, was SonicCon decided to do these OC trading cards. And something that Jake and Kay, who are the people, if people listening don't know, are the organizers behind SonicCon. Amazing people, love them to death.
Very amazing.
We do love them. And one of the ideas that SonicCon put together was actually one of the artists, I forget the name, it'll be in the description of this episode, made this template for people to download, add their own OC, get it printed, and then just trade it with people so everyone can get to know each other. I took home like 100 plus. I took home so many of these cards.
So did I.
And it was crazy and so clever, and I could tell there were people who maybe hadn't thought about fan characters, so were making new creations and stuff. And I did one, but I don't have a fan character, so it's just this old fan art that someone had drawn of me, because I'm not creative enough to have it. It's just me sat on a sofa looking with Sonic. But everyone was trading these things, and it was such a good way for people to get to know each other. And one of the things I like about Sonic events specifically, this reasonably unique thing, which is like the idea of these specific fan characters, and being a way to actually get to know people. And because I appreciate, for a lot of Sonic fans, I used to be the case as well, that like these events are sort of the first time you'd probably be in sort of such a large space with other people, and it's such a nice way of introducing yourself and getting to know each other. It seems to be the case that inspired you, these because not long after a post cropped up introducing us to Ozkar the hedgehog.
Yes.
And it seems like from what you said that was actually quite directly inspired by the experience of these trading cards.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I was the same as you. I thought the trading card thing was a stroke of genius.
Yes.
And it was a real talking point throughout the entire day.
Yes.
But I really loved that it was this like community thread that was tying everyone together.
Yes. Yes.
And it really kind of emphasized the community aspect of Sonicon.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that really touched me. I just felt guilty that I wasn't prepared and I didn't have one to trade. But yeah, it was again, it was a little bit of a light bulb moment because I was asked to do a Sonic album, and there was discussion around how to go about that and the best way to approach it and concepts and things like that. And I was having a lot of discussions with people. And one of the things that I was kind of wrestling with, it's something that you mentioned earlier about having my identity as an artist and still being able to make music for like these iconic franchises.
Yeah.
And that was something that I was aware of when considering doing a Sonic album. Was for me, it had to make sense. Like there needed to be a purpose as to why I'm doing a Sonic album now. Otherwise, I didn't want to do it. And then obviously Sonicon happened and the OC trading cards, and there was a moment after Sonicon, like again one of those light bulb moments, where I was like, oh my gosh, like this won't be a Bentley album, this should be an OC album. So then I spent far too long agonizingly designing Ozkar. I bought myself a graphics pad because
you committed.
I was all in. I was all in. But you know what? Because as far as I was concerned, I was going to come up with the initial design for him, and then if my ventures into digital art weren't fruitful, then at least I wanted to get his design down so I could outsource Ozkar to other more talented artists. But I was really happy with the result. And like I say, there are other artists that could do a much better job. But I was confident enough to like put my efforts out into the world. I probably will continue to do so, and at the same time, Ozkar is already in the hands of other amazing artists. So that's really exciting. But yeah, that's kind of how he came about. And I've just loved every second of the process. I love that I'm kind of tapping into this community within the Sonic community in terms of OCs. But I'm loving the idea of making music as somebody other than me, because it's so freeing. And likewise, the whole process of just doing digital illustration, I find it so relaxing and meditative that even if I wasn't any good at it, I'd still do it because I really enjoy the process.
So would it be fair to say that through this process, it sounds like that in a way that is making your brain approach music in a different way? Because like you said, you're approaching it through the eyes of this character, which I think is really interesting. And I think, again, it's the fact that the art, which I love. I love the microphone they're holding. That's just a really cool. The way it glows in the picture as well. I don't know, it's just really cool. I'm really curious to see what happens And
Yeah.
as this
Well,
character evolves.
um, I'm loving it. It's taking me back to my childhood.
Mm,
Because as a kid, I never got around to coming up with an OC, but I used to sketch and draw Sonic characters all the time.
yes.
And I was very, very invested in the Sonic lore and
Hmm.
the mainline canon.
Hmm.
So coming up with Oscar, honestly, I was a kid in a sweet shop, coming up with his backstory, and I wanted to make sure that because of my link with Silver, that Oscar had a link with Silver.
Yeah.
So of course he's also a hedgehog from the future, and in the time scale where Silver exists and Silver lives,
Yeah.
which is why they're best friends. He's a little bit older, so he's a little bit edgier, which means he can get
Yeah.
away with more stuff. Which is it. There are aspects of him that are kind of like um, slightly biographical, because it's still me. It's just like an extension of me. So I
Hmm.
didn't want to lose that edge. Um, and uh and yeah, but he's not one of the cool kids, he's not Silver, he's not Shadow, and like I've never been one of the cool kids ever, and I don't expect to be in my life. So that's why he doesn't have the ability to time travel like Silver does, but Silver was kind enough to put some of his powers in this vintage microphone that Oscar discovered one day, so he can send his music back to the past for us to listen to right now.
Which is just such a cool concept. It's so cool. I love it so much. I want to ask the names. I mean, Oscar Wilde is genius. Tell me a bit more about the name specifically. What inspired you to come together with that name?
I've actually had that name in my back pocket for a long time.
Amazing.
Uh, I've always had an idea of creating a new artist character for myself,
Yeah.
because I do love working on concepts and
Yeah.
working kind of outside of myself as a person, as an
Yeah.
artist. So I always thought, like, if I were to reinvent myself as a completely different fictional character or semi-fictional character, then I'd call myself Oscar Wilde. Because I like to think I have a bit of a wild side. It's probably a lot more tame than I give myself credit for. Um, but yeah, I liked the sound of it. I think I've always thought it's very on brand for me, and obviously the literary reference
Yes.
to the author. Um, but I've never got around to using it. And then this concept for what is Oscar as we know him came around, and I was like, I already know his name. Don't worry, I've got that covered. I've had it covered for years.
And Oscar already has a remix out, I believe, of Live and Learn.
Yes. Um, Although it's coming back to distributors, I promise. There was an issue when that was sent out to stores, but it's coming back. But yes, I again testing the waters. I'm
Yeah.
loving that there are no limits and no bounds with
Yes.
Oscar, because there are no expectations.
Mm.
So I just wanted to test the waters, and because Live and Learn really blew up in a big way for me this year, I was like, let's give Oscar a slice of that pie. Let's see what he can do with it.
So let's SonicCon 2025
Yes,
next year.
yes.
If if that comes about, which I feel like it's going to, and do you think we could be seeing Oscar trading cards next time?
Oh my gosh, yes, yes. If they have me back, then I need to redeem myself from the SonicCon just passed, and the fact that I didn't have a card to trade, I felt so bad just taking people's cards. So yeah, this time that I will definitely have Ozkar cards.
Amazing. Do you think an event? Would you love to do an event like that again? Is it something you'd like to revisit?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I had a blast at SonicCon. I really hope London happens. And if they invite me back, then it's an immediate yes from me. Ever since the first SonicCon, I've had a handful of invites for Sonic events, and I'm already doing one in America next year. So yeah, if London happens, then consider me 100% on board.
Amazing. I've just got to say, it's been so great to talk about what feels like so much Sonic, so much of your music, and I've loved every moment of it. I think it's so interesting to hear, because the franchise might have its up and downs with popularity of the video games. There have been some highs and lows, but the one thing that's always stayed true and always stayed consistent is the quality of the music. And it's been the soundtrack to so many people's lives in so many different ways. So it's so interesting to hear from the people who actually are part of that, who make that, and understanding how it came about, why, what, just all of it. I've just found it so interesting. So I just want to basically say a huge thank you for taking the time to share with us your experiences and what drives you. And I guess a good final question would be, is what can we expect from a Bentley / Ozkar in the future?
Well, I was planning on taking a break after Memoriam, just because putting out an album is always intensive.
Yes.
But Memoriam popped off.
It really did.
And I've been given so many opportunities off the back of it. So now I'm like in fifth gear again. I'm already making new music.
Yeah.
It's not an album, don't worry. I'm not that much of a masochist.
Don't burn out. Please don't burn out.
No, I'm having a blast, honestly. I've literally yesterday and today just laid down a duet with another Sonic artist that I think the fans are gonna lose their minds over. I know I've lost my mind working on it. I've also lost my voice, as you can hear. It's gotten a bit croaky. But that's going to be coming out really soon, if not this month, then next month.
I'm very curious if there's anything else you can share with us today about that, because that sounds deeply interesting.
Yeah, it's been a trip. I haven't been told I can't talk about it, so I'm going to.
We like that. That's the right approach.
But yeah, mine and Johnny's, as in Johnny from Crush 40, our paths are crossing several times next year, and so we're doing a duet together, which it's a real trip, because obviously I've got my hands on a few Crush 40 tracks, working on them, either the originals or remixing them.
Yes.
So it's not like I haven't worked with Johnny's voice, I guess, as it were, but to have like an actual duet with our two voices singing the same song and interacting on the same song, again, like working on Hard Times, I've just been giddy in the studio this past week, because it's really taken me back to my childhood. And if I could go back and tell, like, I don't know, 17-year-old me that you're gonna be singing with Johnny when you're celebrating your 15th anniversary, then
that is Bentley, that's wild news. You understand there will be Sonic fans listening to that right now whose minds have just melted. The idea, that is crazy, crazy news. That's so exciting.
Yeah. I've got to say, I've had to step up because obviously Johnny is a incredible vocalist. I've known that for a long time, but of course he's really pushed me on this song, and I've had to pull out rock Bentley with that gravelly high alto to come and match Johnny, which is why we've been talking for a bit, and I'm sounding a bit croaky now. I sounded really croaky yesterday, let me tell you. But it sounds great. The song sounds great, and I'm very, very excited for everyone to hear it.
So exciting. This is a note to any event organizers out there listening. I'm talking to you, Sonicon, as well, that there are opportunities for this to be performed. So let's not waste this opportunity. Get on it, people.
I will say that may or may not have already been in discussion.
Oh my goodness.
I can neither confirm nor deny. And like I mentioned, I've already got a handful of shows that are booked for next year, including my first ever American show. It's finally happening.
Long
So
overdue.
all of those comments and messages that I've had over the years. When are you coming to America? Next year. It's finally happening.
Do not miss this. You're finally getting it. No excuses.
So yeah, and an Oscars project. It's in the works. Yeah, it's bubbling away there. Nothing is set in stone, but if it all comes together, and it seems like it is, then Ozkar will be making his musical debut in a pretty big way in the first quarter of next year.
That's super exciting. Thank you for sharing that, and again, I cannot wait to see what people's response to that news is. I am very excited because I'm excited now, so I can only imagine what people out there are thinking as well.
Yeah, me, wild. It's like I say, kid in a sweet shop. It's been crazy.
We're on Radio Sega. We're listening to music throughout the night, and of course, when I have the one and only Bentley Jones as a guest, it feels amiss not to ask you, let's start with Sonic, because obviously we've talked a lot about Sonic today, and you've covered so many forms of the different, your own Sonic music, original creations, covers. At this exact moment in time, this very moment in time, is there one song that out of all of them just really speaks to you right now, or something that you're just very fond of at this exact moment in time that we should maybe listen to?
It's such a tough question. They call me Sonic. No, I'm just kidding. I love them all in very, very different ways. It's really tough. So I'm gonna skip the obvious, which would obviously be Dreams. But yeah, the 10th anniversary version of that is very dear to me, because it was very much a moment of how ridiculously enormous can we make this song.
Yes.
And I just threw everything in the kitchen sink at it. So yeah, skipping the obvious, I would probably choose, since we've already spoken about it, The Weight of the World, because yeah, performing that live for the first time at SonicCon, and hearing the audience gasp when they realized that I was going to sing it, was just, it was a vibe. It was a total vibe. So yeah, I think we should have a listen to that right now.
we've talked about your Sonic music, but also like you have so much. Again, Memoriam, 15 years as an artist, and so that's just what feels like an infinite catalogue of music, and so many songs through so many parts of your life. So this feels like such an evil question to ask you, really, because it's basically like, it's not like picking one of your favorite kids. Like, pick one of your favorite kids, also you have hundreds of kids. So through the back catalogue up till now, what is one song that right now is in your mind that you think, yes, let's share that today?
Oh man. Well, I always drift more to my current work.
Of course, yes.
Because once I've kind of like set my babies out into the world, then I have a tendency to move on. So one song from my current works that still really speaks to me, even though it's been out a little while now, is I Never Left. And it's from Memoriam, and it's just taken me aback because it's an original, and I've released it independently, but I plopped it in a couple of my live sets when it first came about. When it comes to originals, and especially as an indie artist, you never know how it's going to land, if it's going to land at all. So what I tend to do, if you haven't noticed already, I like to talk. So at my shows, I like to talk about my songs and how they came about. And so I was telling the audience that this song is about my most recent breakup. At least it was at the time. And I just got out of like 8.5 years of something really, really toxic and at times abusive. And that whole kind of process of asking myself, like, well, why didn't I leave? And it's a really common question when it comes to abusive relationships. I for the longest time I beat myself up over that question, and eventually I kind of turned it on its head and said, well, you're loyal and you're dedicated and your love is very, very like fiercely dedicated and loyal, and that's why you didn't leave. So the fact that you didn't leave is something to be commended and something to be celebrated. So that's kind of how I Never Left came about. When I explain that to audiences and sing it live, they really connect to it, and that song seems to have resonated with so many people. And it just came completely out of the blue, caught me off guard. I mean, the song is very special to me for obvious reasons, but the fact it's resonated with so many people makes it very, very special. And so that's the song I'd like to share with your listeners today.
Let's take a listen to I Never Left.
Remember when I died in the pony when I cried and I had to leave alone. All your birthday lights, then I left your side. You made me enemy number one. All that I wanted to be part of your family, but you just kept me away. Now that you've had your say, baby, get out of my way. I'm gonna set the record straight, 'cause I never left. I stood by you, at least I know my heart is true, 'cause I never left, I loved you, I loved you. What you say, what you do, not the same and never true. Love so hard, could not resist, I fell for a narcissist. 'cause I loved you, I loved you. 'Cause I never loved you the best, never gave you less than that. Everything that you couldn't do, all the messed up things you do, all the times I stood by you, at least I know my heart is true. 'Cause I never loved you the best.
I think that's it. We've covered so much tonight, and
Oh, I don't know if I told you about the very first summer of Sonic.
the very
Um,
first one, yes, in that tiny little space.
Yeah, because I think I mentioned it to Jake and Kay when I spoke
Should
to
I
them the
stop
other week.
recording this? Should I stop recording this?
No. To be fair, I probably would have been happy to include this in the
Okay,
episode.
we'll see if it's good then.
But yeah, that very first summer of Sonic, um, I actually had a hole in my back, and I wasn't supposed to be there. I just had a tumor, and I had to have emergency surgery. And there were complications where they couldn't stitch me back up. So if anyone who doesn't know, just in case this does make the pod, but if they can't stitch you back up, they'll leave the wound open, and they'll just pack it with dressing until it heals. Obviously, it takes much longer to heal. And yeah, this was like a really short space of time, ridiculously short. I don't know. It certainly wasn't any longer than a couple of weeks. And my doctors were like, you can't seriously consider doing an event with a live performance with a hole in your back. And I was like, watch me, hold my beer. So yeah, that very first summer of Sonic, yeah, I can see, like, I've seen video clips and photos, and if you are eagle-eyed, you can see on the back of my top there's padding where the hole in my spine is dressed. So yeah, that's dedication to the little blue guy.
I admire the dedication, the way you need to be told off. You should not be doing that. Do not.
Oh,
That is
that's
not
why.
a rule.
It's
Do
why I
not-
took
do
an
not replicate.
entourage. Like,
Yes, very wise.
people thought I was being a diva, and I was like, no, I need these people.
This is my medical support right now. In case I guess it's the one thing I want to say. Thank you for
No,
taking
thank
part in
you.
this, for joining us on the podcast, for joining us on Radio Sega. And we're going into Christmas now, but it's the festive period where, you know, Radio Sega Winterfest, it's all Christmassy themed. Are you doing anything? You got any exciting plans for the festive period? Maybe just taking a break? Maybe just resting?
Yeah, I'm gonna take a few days off. Yeah, I like my Christmas to be low key. I do. In the
Such a
past,
good
there's been like a lot of pressure around Christmas, and I don't buy into that. I think people should just do what brings them joy and the people that they care about joy as well. And if that means keeping it low key. So I'm spending Christmas with my boyfriend, and Christmas Day, Mama Jones is going to come and join us, and we're going to have Christmas dinner because my boyfriend is an incredible chef. So yeah, even when it's just the two of us for Christmas, he lays out like a 5-course feast. It's absurd. So of course, Mama Jones is getting in on that this year.
I love it. Well, have a happy holidays and a wonderful Christmas. Again, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Can't wait to see what happens for you next year. And yeah, thank you again.
Thank you very much for having me.